My name is Ethan Jarrett, and I used to think I knew my wife. 10 years of marriage, 2 beautiful kids, a decent house in the suburbs outside Boston. I'm a product designer, nothing glamorous, but it pays the bills and lets me work with my hands and my brain. Vanessa's the lawyer, the one with the sharp suits and sharper tongue. She's always been restless, always looking for something more, but I figured that was just her ambition talking. Thursday evening, October 12th, 2024. The kids were upstairs. Dylan, 9 years old and sharp as a tack, helping his little sister Chloe with her homework. I was in the living room, laptop open, finishing up some designs for a client, when I heard the familiar click of heels on hardwood. Vanessa was getting dressed up, again. She came down the stairs like she was walking a runway, wearing that black dress I'd bought her for our anniversary 2 years ago. Her perfume hit me from 10 feet away, something expensive and cloying that made my sinuses burn. She was checking her phone, thumbs flying across the screen with the intensity of a stock trader. "Where are you going?" I asked, not looking up from my laptop. We'd been through this dance before. "Out," she said, still typing. "Out where? It's Thursday night." She finally looked at me, and I saw something in her eyes I'd been seeing more and more lately. Irritation mixed with something else. Something cold. "Just out, Ethan. Do I need to file a report?" I closed my laptop and stood up. "With who?" The typing stopped. "What? You're dressed like you're going to a 5-star restaurant. You've got enough perfume on to choke a horse, and you've been texting someone for the past hour. So I'll ask again. With who?" She sighed like I was the most exhausting person on the planet. "My ex, if you must know." The words hit me like a slap. "Your ex-boyfriend? Derek?" She nodded casually like she was telling me she was going to the grocery store. "He's in town for business. We're just catching up." "Vanessa, that's completely inappropriate. You're married. We have kids upstairs." That's when she exploded. "I'll cheat once, Ethan. Don't make it a problem." Her voice was sharp, demanding, like she was cross-examining a hostile witness. "You need to understand me. I deserve this." I stood there, speechless. 10 years of marriage, and she'd just dismissed it all with the casual brutality of someone canceling a subscription service. The woman I'd fallen in love with, the mother of my children, was standing in our living room telling me she had the right to destroy our family because she deserved it. "Vanessa." "No." She grabbed her purse from the counter. "I'm done explaining myself to you. I'm done being the perfect wife and mother every single day. I need something for me." The front door slammed so hard it rattled the windows. I stood there in the sudden silence, processing what had just happened. Upstairs, I could hear Dylan asking Chloe if Mommy was okay. I sat down on the couch, my hands shaking. 10 years of marriage dismissed instantly. 2 kids who were about to have their world turned upside down. All because Vanessa deserved to cheat. I picked up my phone and called her parents first. Margaret answered on the second ring. "Ethan? How are you, dear?" "Not great, Margaret. I need to tell you something about Vanessa." I explained the situation as calmly as I could. The silence on the other end stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. "She said what?" Margaret's voice was horrified. "That she was going to cheat, and I needed to understand her." "Oh my God. Ethan, I'm so sorry. I don't know what's gotten into her lately. She's been different when she calls. Distant." I talked to Margaret for 20 minutes, then called my own parents. My mother, bless her heart, offered to drive over immediately and take the kids for the weekend. "You don't need them seeing this," she said. And she was right. But then I had an idea. A terrible, necessary idea. I looked up Derek Turner's information online. It wasn't hard. He was a real estate developer, the kind of guy who plasters his face on bus benches and billboards. Married to Julia Turner, a nurse at Boston General. 2 kids of their own. I found Julia's number through the hospital directory and made the call that would change everything. "Hello?" Hi, is this Julia Turner? Yes, who is this? My name is Ethan Jarrett. I think we need to talk. Your husband is out with my wife tonight, and they're not discussing business. The silence stretched for 10 seconds. Then, what do you mean? I mean, my wife just told me she was going out with her ex-boyfriend, your husband, and that she was going to cheat on me. She said she deserved it. That's impossible. Derek said he was at a work dinner with clients. Mrs. Turner, I think we've both been lied to. Can you come over? We need to compare notes. She arrived 45 minutes later. Julia Turner was a small woman with tired eyes and calloused hands, the kind of person who'd spent her life taking care of other people. She sat at my kitchen table, clutching a cup of coffee like it was an anchor. Show me, she said. I pulled out my phone and showed her the text messages I'd found on Vanessa's iPad, the one she'd forgotten to password protect. Messages going back 2 weeks, planning this reunion. Julia showed me Derek's phone records, which she'd pulled up on their shared account. The same dates, the same times, calls and texts to a number I recognized as Vanessa's. They've been planning this, Julia said, her voice hollow. He told me he was working late every night this week. Said he had a big deal closing. She's been cold as ice for a month, I said. I thought it was work stress. We sat there until 3 a.m, 2 people who'd been married to strangers. We shared stories, compared lies, and slowly assembled the truth. Our spouses had been rekindling their old relationship for weeks, maybe months. They'd both decided their marriages were obstacles to their happiness, and they were willing to destroy 2 families to get what they wanted. Julia cried. I made more coffee. We talked about our kids, our jobs, our lives that were about to be blown apart. And somewhere around dawn, we started planning. We can't let them get away with this, Julia said. They think we're going to roll over and take it. I looked at this woman I'd known for 6 hours, this stranger who understood exactly what I was going through, and I nodded. What do you have in mind? The sun was coming up when we heard the front door open. Julia and I had been talking for 8 hours straight, and we were ready. Vanessa stumbled into the kitchen at 7:15 a.m., looking like she'd been hit by a truck. Her makeup was smeared, her dress was wrinkled, and she reeked of alcohol and regret. She was clearly expecting to sneak upstairs and pretend nothing had happened. Instead, she found her husband and Derek's wife sitting at the kitchen table with divorce papers spread out between them. She stopped dead in her tracks, swaying slightly. What is she doing here? Comparing notes, I said calmly, about our cheating spouses. Julia held up her phone. Your boyfriend told me he was at a work dinner last night. Funny how his GPS shows he was at the Marriott downtown instead. Vanessa's face went white. The alcohol haze was clearing fast, and reality was hitting her like a freight train. How long has she been here? Vanessa's voice was small now, nothing like the commanding tone she'd used the night before. I checked my watch. About 8 hours. We've had a very productive conversation. We know everything, Julia said, spreading out printed text messages like she was dealing cards. The planning, the lies, the hotel bookings. You two aren't very good at covering your tracks. Vanessa looked at the evidence. Weeks of messages between her and Derek, planning their affair down to the smallest detail. Hotel confirmations, restaurant reservations, lies they'd told their respective spouses. It was a mistake, she said, starting to cry. I was drunk and stupid. Julia laughed, but there was no humor in it. You were stone sober when you sent this message 2 weeks ago. Can't wait to feel alive again. He will never understand what I need. I picked up one of the papers from the table. You said you'd cheat once, Vanessa. You told me not to make it a problem. Well, I'm not making it a problem. I'm making it a solution. The divorce papers were already drawn up. Julia had called her lawyer friend at 4 a.m., and he'd emailed over a basic template. Nothing fancy, but it got the point across. Where are Dylan and Chloe? Vanessa asked, panic creeping into her voice. At my parents' house, I said. I sent them away before this conversation. They don't need to see their mother destroy their family. Vanessa sank into a chair, the weight of what she'd done finally hitting her. Ethan, please, we can work this out. It was one night. One night that you planned for 2 weeks, Julia said. One night that you told your husband you deserved. One night that you chose over 10 years of marriage and 2 children. I stood up and walked to the counter, pouring myself another cup of coffee. My hands were steady now. The shock had worn off, replaced by something colder and more focused. You know what the funny thing is, Vanessa? Last night, when you told me you were going to cheat, I actually considered trying to stop you. I thought about begging or arguing or making some grand gesture to win you back. I turned to face her. But then I realized something. You didn't want me to fight for you. You wanted me to give you permission to blow up our family. You wanted me to be the understanding husband who let you find yourself at the expense of our children's stability. That's exactly what it was. I sat back down across from her. You wanted to have your cake and eat it too. Keep the house, keep the kids, keep the respect of your friends and family, but also get to screw your ex-boyfriend whenever you felt like you deserved it. Julia nodded. Derek tried the same thing with me 3 years ago. Different woman, same story. I was stupid enough to forgive him then. Well, I'm not that stupid, I said. And neither is Julia, apparently. Vanessa looked between us, finally understanding that we'd formed an alliance. You can't just team up against us. This isn't how marriages work. You're right, I said. This isn't how marriages work. Marriage is about commitment and trust and putting your family before your own selfish desires. What you did last night. That's how divorces work. She tried a different approach. Think about the kids, Ethan. Dylan and Chloe need both their parents. They need parents they can respect, Julia said. Parents who don't lie and cheat and justify it by saying they deserve it. I leaned forward. Here's what's going to happen, Vanessa. You're going to sign these papers. You're going to move out of this house. And you're going to explain to our children why Mommy decided that her happiness was more important than their family. I won't sign anything, she said, her lawyer instincts kicking in. You can't force me. You're right, I can't, I said, but I can make your life very uncomfortable until you do. Julia and I have been very busy this morning. We've made some calls. Julia smiled for the first time since she'd arrived. Your law firm's ethics committee is going to be very interested in the text messages where you discuss using your legal connections to help Derek's real estate deals. Quid pro quo and all that. Vanessa's face went even whiter. You wouldn't. Try us, I said. You declared war on our family last night. Don't be surprised when we fight back. She sat there for a long moment, looking at the evidence spread across the table, looking at 2 people who'd spent the night planning her downfall. Finally, she stood up. I need to shower and change clothes, she said. Then I'm going to call my parents. Good idea, I said. They already know what happened. I called them last night. They're as disgusted as I am. After she left the kitchen, Julia and I sat in silence for a moment. Think she'll sign? Julia asked. Eventually, I said, but not without a fight. People like Vanessa don't go down easy. Good thing we're just getting started then. By noon, half the neighborhood knew what had happened. Mrs. Krantz from next door had seen Julia's car in my driveway all night and put 2 and 2 together when she saw Vanessa stumbling home at dawn. The woman was a one-person news network, and by the time I picked up the kids from my parents' house, my phone was buzzing with calls from friends and neighbors. Daddy, why was Mommy crying this morning? Chloe asked as I buckled her into her car seat. Mommy made some bad choices, sweetheart, but everything's going to be okay. Dylan, being 9 and way too perceptive for his own good, cut right to the heart of it. Are you and Mommy getting divorced? I looked at my son in the rearview mirror. Probably, buddy, but that doesn't change how much we both love you and Chloe. Is it because of that man she went out with? Sometimes I forgot how much kids see and hear. What do you know about that? I heard her talking on the phone in her room. She was laughing a lot. She doesn't laugh like that with you anymore. Out of the mouths of babes. That afternoon, while the kids were at soccer practice, Julia and I put the next phase of our plan into motion. We'd spent the morning researching Derek's business dealings and Vanessa's professional relationships, looking for pressure points. Derek Turner owned 3 real estate development companies and had his fingers in half a dozen major projects around Boston. What he didn't have was a squeaky clean reputation. Julia had found some interesting discrepancies in his tax filings, nothing illegal, but enough to raise questions with his investors. He's supposed to be in a meeting with the Riverside Project investors tomorrow morning, Julia said, scrolling through his calendar on their shared iPad, presenting the final numbers for a $50 million development. Think they'd be interested to know their lead developer spent last night cheating on his wife instead of preparing for their meeting? Only one way to find out. We drove to Derek's office building, a gleaming tower in downtown Boston that screamed, "I make too much money and want everyone to know it." His company, Turner Development, occupied the entire 20th floor. The receptionist was a young woman who looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine. "Can I help you?" "We're here to see Derek Turner," I said. "It's about the Riverside project." "Do you have an appointment?" "He'll want to see us," Julia said. "Tell him his wife is here." 5 minutes later, Derek Turner came storming out of his office like a man whose house was on fire. He was everything I'd expected: expensive suit, perfect hair, the kind of artificial charm that made my skin crawl. "Julia, what the hell are you doing here? And who is this?" "This is Ethan Jarrett," Julia said calmly. "Vanessa's husband. We thought you might want to discuss last night." Derek's face went through several interesting color changes. "I don't know what you think you know, but we know everything," I said, pulling out my phone. "Every text message, every lie, every hotel reservation. The question is, do you want to discuss this here in front of your employees, or would you prefer somewhere more private?" He led us into his office, a monument to ego with floor-to-ceiling windows and enough awards and photos to stock a museum. The moment the door closed, his fake charm evaporated. "You can't prove anything," he said. Julia laughed. "Derek, I've been married to you for 8 years. I know where you hide things." She pulled out a folder thick with printed documents. Bank records showing payments to the Marriott, credit card receipts for dinner for 2, text messages to my phone last night claiming you were in a business meeting while you were actually screwing your ex-girlfriend. "And here's my personal favorite," I said, showing him a screenshot from Vanessa's phone. "The message where you told her to leave the details to me, baby. I know how to handle this." Very romantic. Also very incriminating. Derek sat down heavily in his leather chair. "What do you want?" "Justice," Julia said simply. "Money?" he asked. "We want you to understand that actions have consequences," I said. "You and Vanessa decided to blow up 2 families because you thought you could get away with it. You thought we'd be too shocked, too hurt, too weak to fight back." "You thought wrong," Julia added. I walked over to his desk and picked up a framed photo of his kids. "These are beautiful children, Derek. How do you think they're going to feel when they find out Daddy threw away their family for a one-night stand?" "You wouldn't tell my kids." "We won't have to," Julia said. "You will. Because if you don't, I'll make sure everyone else knows first. Your investors, your clients, your country club buddies. The choice is yours." Derek tried to stand up, tried to regain some authority, but I was already moving. I accidentally knocked over his coffee cup, sending hot liquid cascading across his desk and onto his laptop. "Oops," I said. "Sorry about that. Guess you'll need to recreate those Riverside project files." "You son of a—" "Careful," Julia said. "We're recording this conversation. Wouldn't want your investors to hear you lose your temper over a simple accident." Derek looked between us, finally understanding that he was outmatched. "What do you want me to do?" "Sign divorce papers," Julia said. without a fight. Give me the house, joint custody of the kids, and half of everything. And stay away from Vanessa. And if I don't? I smiled. Then, tomorrow morning's investor meeting is going to be very interesting. Julia has some fascinating financial documents she'd love to share with them. We left him sitting in his ruined office, staring at the water damage on his precious awards. In the elevator, Julia was grinning like a kid on Christmas morning. "That felt good," she said. "We're just getting started." The next morning brought the first real counterattack. Vanessa had spent the night at her parents' house and she'd clearly been busy. My phone started ringing at 6 a.m. "Ethan, this is Carol Henderson from Dillon's school. I need to speak with you about the custody situation." "What custody situation?" "Your wife called this morning. She's concerned about the children's welfare. She's requested that they not be released to you without her present." I felt my blood pressure spike. "She what?" "She mentioned some concerning behavior, some instability at home. I think it would be best if you both came in to discuss this." Vanessa was trying to paint me as an unfit father. It was a smart move, legally speaking, but it was also a declaration of total war. I called Julia. "She's going after the kids. Derek tried the same thing with me yesterday afternoon. Called my supervisor at the hospital, told them I was having a breakdown." "What did you do?" "Showed them the evidence. All of it. Derek's affair, the lies, the manipulation. My supervisor was not impressed. Think the school will listen to reason? Only one way to find out. But Ethan, we need to escalate this. They're not going to stop until they've destroyed us completely." The meeting at Dillon's school was a masterclass in manipulation. Vanessa showed up in her most conservative suit, playing the role of concerned mother to perfection. She had talking points prepared, crocodile tears ready on demand, and a story about my recent erratic behavior that would have been convincing if it weren't complete fiction. Principal Morrison, a decent man who'd known our family for 3 years, listened patiently as Vanessa spun her tale of woe. "I'm just concerned about the children's safety," she said, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "Ethan has been drinking heavily, staying out all night, bringing strange women to the house." "That's interesting," I said calmly, "because the only strange woman who's been to our house recently is Julia Turner, Derek's wife. You remember Derek, don't you, Vanessa? Your ex-boyfriend? The one you spent Thursday night with at the Marriott?" Principal Morrison's eyebrows shot up. "I'm sorry, what?" I pulled out my phone and showed him the text messages, the hotel receipts, the timeline of Vanessa's affair. "My wife decided she deserved to cheat on me, Mr. Morrison. When I found out about it, I contacted the other betrayed spouse. We've been working together to protect our children from this mess." Vanessa's composure cracked. "That's not how it happened." "Really? Because I have a recording of you telling me you were going to cheat and that I needed to understand you. Would you like me to play it?" The meeting ended with Principal Morrison suggesting that both parents needed to work out their issues before involving the school. Vanessa stormed out, her manipulation attempt having backfired spectacularly. But she wasn't done. That afternoon, she showed up at my office. I work for a small product design firm, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone and drama spreads fast. Vanessa had clearly been counting on that. "I need to speak with my husband," she told my boss, Rachel Kim. "It's a family emergency." Rachel found me in the workshop, where I was putting the finishing touches on a prototype for a new kitchen gadget. "Your wife is here. She seems upset." I found Vanessa in the lobby, once again playing the role of distraught wife. But this time, she had backup. Her friend Bree was with her, along with some guy in an expensive suit who screamed, "Lawyer." "Ethan, we need to talk," Vanessa said, "about the children. We talked this morning at the school. You lost." "This is my attorney, James Walsh," she said, ignoring my comment. "He's prepared to file for emergency custody if you don't start being reasonable." I looked at the lawyer, a thin man with dead eyes and a briefcase full of threats. "And what exactly would you base that on?" "Your recent erratic behavior. Walsh said. Bringing strangers to the family home, exposing the children to inappropriate situations, attempting to alienate them from their mother. You mean working with Julia Turner to uncover your client's affair? Protecting my children from seeing their mother's breakdown? Documenting her admission that she intended to cheat on her husband? Walsh's confidence wavered slightly. I don't know what you think you have, but I have everything, I said. Every lie, every manipulation, every attempt to rewrite history. And if you try to take my children away from me based on your client's fiction, I'll bury you both in court. Bree, who'd been silent until now, finally spoke up. Ethan, you're being unreasonable. Vanessa made a mistake, but she's trying to fix things. A mistake? I laughed. She planned this affair for 2 weeks. She told me to my face that she deserved to cheat. She tried to manipulate the school into thinking I was unfit. That's not a mistake. That's a pattern of calculated cruelty. She loves you, Bree insisted. No, she doesn't. She loves the idea of having everything. The affair, the marriage, the kids, the house, the respect. She wants to eat her cake and have it too. But that's not how life works. I turned to Vanessa. You made your choice Thursday night. You chose Derek over our family. You chose your own selfish desires over our children's welfare. Now, you get to live with the consequences. I can change, she said, tears starting to flow. I can be better. You had 10 years to be better. You chose to be worse. They left without another word, but I knew this was far from over. Vanessa was desperate now, and desperate people do dangerous things. That evening, Julia called with news that confirmed my suspicions. Derek's missing, she said. He never came home last night, and his office says he didn't show up for the investor meeting this morning. Think he ran? I think they both did. Ethan, I checked our bank accounts. He cleaned out our savings. Took everything except what I had in my personal account. I ran to my computer and checked our finances. Vanessa had tried the same thing, but I'd been faster. I'd moved our money into a trust account the day before, something my lawyer friend had suggested. She tried to clean us out too, I said, but she was too late. What do we do now? We find them, and we finish this. They weren't hard to track down. Desperate people make stupid mistakes, and Vanessa and Derek had made several. Derek had used his credit card to book a room at a resort in the Berkshires, apparently thinking that 90 miles from Boston was far enough to hide. Julia and I drove up there Saturday morning, leaving our kids with my parents. The resort was one of those places that caters to wealthy people who want to feel rustic without actually roughing it. Log cabins with hot tubs and room service. Cabin 47, Julia said, checking the information she'd gotten from Derek's credit card company. Booked for 3 nights. We found Derek's BMW in the parking lot, looking distinctly out of place among the SUVs and pickup trucks. I let the air out of all 4 tires while Julia kept watch. That's petty, she said. I'm just getting started. We knocked on the cabin door at 10 a.m. Derek answered, wearing a bathrobe and a guilty expression. What the hell are you doing here? He demanded. Looking for my wife, I said, pushing past him into the cabin. And your money. Vanessa was sitting on the couch in her pajamas, looking like she'd been crying for hours. The romantic getaway clearly wasn't going as planned. How did you find us? She asked. You used Derek's credit card, Julia said. Did you really think we wouldn't check? This is harassment, Derek said, trying to regain some authority. I'm calling the police. Good idea, I said. Let's tell them about the $50,000 you stole from your joint account with Julia, and the $20,000 Vanessa tried to steal from our kids' college fund. Derek's face went white. That's our money. Actually, it's not, Julia said. I talked to a lawyer yesterday. Taking money from joint accounts during divorce proceedings without the other spouse's knowledge is considered theft, especially when you're planning to flee the state. I looked around the cabin. It was clear they'd planned to stay here for a while. Suitcases everywhere, groceries in the kitchen, romantic candles that hadn't been lit. "So this is your big plan?" I said to Vanessa. "Run away to the mountains and play house while your children wonder where mommy went." "It's not like that," she said weakly. "Then what is it like? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you abandoned your kids to shack up with your boyfriend." Derek tried to step between us. "You need to leave. Now." "Or what?" I asked. "You'll call the police? Please do. I'd love to explain to them how you and my wife conspired to steal money from our families and flee the state." "We weren't fleeing," Vanessa said. "We just needed time to think." "You needed time to figure out how to spin this," Julia corrected. "How to make yourselves the victims instead of the villains." I walked over to the kitchen and started going through their groceries. Champagne, caviar, chocolate-covered strawberries, very romantic, very expensive, especially when you're spending other people's money. "That's enough," Derek said, grabbing my arm. I looked down at his hand on my arm, then back at his face. "You really want to do this?" He let go, but I could see the anger building in his eyes. "Good. Angry people make mistakes." "You know what I think happened here?" I said, continuing to rifle through their supplies. "I think you two convinced yourselves that you were star-crossed lovers, kept apart by cruel fate and inconvenient spouses. You probably told each other that your marriages were dead anyway, that your kids would be better off with happy parents, even if those parents were cheating liars." "You don't understand," Vanessa said. "What Derek and I have is built on betrayal and theft," Julia finished. "You destroyed 2 families because you were bored, because you thought you deserved something more exciting than the life you'd built." I found Derek's laptop on the kitchen counter and opened it. Password protected, smart, but not smart enough to log out of your email. Derek lunged for the laptop, but I was already reading. "Oh, this is interesting. An email to a real estate agent in Florida. Looks like you two were planning to relocate permanently. New identities, new lives, new everything." "Give me that," Derek demanded. "Why? Afraid your investors will find out you were planning to disappear with their money?" That's when Derek snapped. He swung at me, a wild haymaker that would have connected if I hadn't been expecting it. I ducked, and his fist hit the cabin wall instead. "Derek!" Vanessa screamed. He clutched his hand, cursing. I stood up slowly, the laptop still in my hands. "Feel better?" I asked. "You bastard," he snarled, cradling his injured hand. "Actually, my mother is a saint. But your mother? I bet she's real proud of the man you've become." Julia was recording everything on her phone. "That's assault on video, Derek. Want to try again?" Derek looked at his bleeding knuckles, at his laptop in my hands, at the evidence of his crimes spread out across the cabin. He was trapped, and he knew it. "What do you want?" he asked. "Justice," I said. "But since that's apparently too much to ask for, I'll settle for consequences." I closed the laptop and tucked it under my arm. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to return every penny you stole. You're going to sign divorce papers without a fight. You're going to stay away from our families. And you're going to explain to your children why Daddy decided to blow up their lives for a weekend in the mountains." "And if we don't?" Vanessa asked. "Then this laptop, with all its emails and financial records, goes to the FBI. The theft charges go to the district attorney, and the story goes to every news outlet in Boston." I headed for the door, then turned back. "Oh, and Derek? Your tires are flat. Might want to call AAA." We left them there, stranded in their romantic hideaway, facing the wreckage of their own making. They came back to Boston Sunday evening, defeated and desperate. Derek's hand was in a cast, and Vanessa looked like she'd aged 10 years in 2 days. They'd returned the stolen money, signed preliminary divorce papers, and agreed to our terms. But I wasn't done with them yet. Monday morning, I put the final phase of my plan into motion. Our neighborhood had a private social media group, one of those places where people shared recommendations and complained about leaf blowers. I'd never been much of a participant, but today I had something to share. I posted the whole story, every detail, every lie, Every manipulation. The hotel receipts, the text messages, the theft, the attempted custody grab. I laid it all out in excruciating detail, with documentation for every claim. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Comments poured in from neighbors, friends, parents from the kids' school. The consensus was clear. Vanessa and Derek had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Vanessa called me, hysterical. "How could you do this? Everyone knows now. Everyone." "Good," I said. "Now they know who you really are." "My career is ruined. My reputation. Should have thought of that before you decided to cheat. The kids are going to see this. They're going to know everything." "They already know everything, Vanessa. Kids aren't stupid. They've been watching you lie and manipulate for months. At least now they know their father fought for them." She hung up on me, but the calls kept coming. Derek's business partners, demanding explanations. Vanessa's law firm, asking for her resignation. Friends and family members who'd seen the post and wanted to know if it was true. By Tuesday afternoon, it was over. Derek's real estate empire was collapsing as investors pulled out and partners distanced themselves. Vanessa had been forced to resign from her law firm to avoid an ethics investigation. Their affair, which had seemed so romantic and justified in their minds, had cost them everything. Julia and I met for coffee that afternoon, two people who'd been strangers a week ago and were now bonded by shared experience. "Any regrets?" she asked. "About destroying them? None. About my marriage ending? Some. But not about fighting back. Derek called me this morning, begged me to take him back, said he'd learned his lesson." "What did you tell him?" "I told him that some lessons come too late." She was right. Vanessa and Derek had made their choice, and now they had to live with it. They'd chosen momentary pleasure over lasting love, selfish desire over family responsibility. They'd thought they could have everything, but they'd ended up with nothing. The divorce proceedings went smoothly after that. Vanessa, facing financial ruin and social exile, agreed to joint custody and a fair division of assets. Derek, his business destroyed and his reputation in tatters, gave Julia everything she asked for. 6 months later, I was sitting in my backyard, watching Dylan and Chloe play on their swing set. They'd adjusted better than I'd expected. Kids are resilient, and they'd seen enough of their mother's behavior to understand that the divorce wasn't their fault. Julia had moved into a smaller house 2 streets over. We'd become close friends, bonded by our shared experience and our determination to build better lives for our children. There was nothing romantic between us. We'd both learned the cost of betrayal too well for that. But there was respect and understanding, and the knowledge that we'd fought for what mattered most. Vanessa had moved back in with her parents, her legal career over, her social circle destroyed. She saw the kids every other weekend under supervision, and spent most of those visits trying to explain why she'd made the choices she'd made. The kids listened politely, but I could see in their eyes that they'd already made their own judgments. Derek had declared bankruptcy and moved to Florida, where he worked selling used cars for his brother-in-law. His children visited him once a year, awkward trips that nobody enjoyed. They'd both gotten exactly what they deserved, each other and nothing else. As I watched my kids play, I thought about the night this all started, when Vanessa had told me she was going to cheat, and I needed to understand her. She'd been right about one thing. I did need to understand her. I needed to understand that she was selfish, manipulative, and willing to destroy her family for a momentary thrill. Understanding her had set me free. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Dylan came running over, grass stains on his knees and a huge grin on his face. "Dad, are you happy?" he asked. I looked at my son, this amazing kid who'd been through so much and come out stronger, and I realized that I was. For the first time in years, I was genuinely happy. "Yeah, buddy, I am." "Good," he said, and ran back to play with his sister. I sat there watching them, thinking about justice and consequences and the price of betrayal. Vanessa had thought she could cheat once and make it my problem. Instead, she'd made it her own problem, and she'd be living with the consequences for the rest of her life. Sometimes the good guys do win. Sometimes justice is served. Sometimes the people who think they can destroy others without consequences learn exactly how wrong they are. And sometimes that's enough.